Cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode. And if you see who's joining me today, Dan Walsh. Nice to see you, sir.
Good to see you too, Mike. Thank you for having me back on. And
Yeah,
this time not in a war with technology.
it felt like we had like a lot of things going on at the time, right? We had when you and I were first starting, I think we were about a month into the peak of COVID, and we were also fighting technology issues on both ends of the spectrum on both of our screens. So the forces weren't on our side that day, but it seems like in both regards we're both in pretty good spots right now. So I had to make sure that we were knocking out another one of these. So yeah, nice to see you.
Good
But
to
I
see
do
you,
got
man.
I do got to start off by asking because, when you and I last spoke, a lot of the things that you were doing, like in your professional life, I know you were doing wrestling and comedy. Those were two industries that kind of got hit a little rough at the start of COVID.
Hmm?
Where is maybe, your headspace at now in terms of going back and picking those things up now that things have kind of lightened up a little bit than they were 2 years ago?
Well, like with wrestling, I don't know I got hurt a few years ago, so like being able to do it on like a full scale, that hasn't been for a while. I think the last time I was like working consistently wrestling was like 2015. But I had started to like I have a friend out in LA that has a company, and um I love doing it. It's one of those things I always love doing. So like I got in the ring, but like even then, man, like my body's just crap. If you do that for so long, it just really beats up on you. And then when you stop from doing it and then you try to go back, it's like you aged 30 years. So that one, I mean I haven't been back in the ring since COVID. Yeah. Which like I shouldn't be in it anyways, man. I have concussions. My back's really messed up. Like that was something I found out after COVID. Like I had back pain. I've had back and neck pains for so long that I literally just learned how to just ignore them. And then I like went into the doctor because it was really bad. Like I was like not even able to walk at times. Then my doctor was like, did the X-rays and everything. And she's like, yeah, you have like degenerated discs. You have like a growth in your spine. You have like, and I'm like, and she asked if I was like in a car accident, and I was like, no,
Wow.
I said, I haven't been kind on my body at all. Like since I was a kid, like it was full contact sports. I was ranked a USTU fighter, uh, hockey, the Marine Corps, just carrying everything and anything on my back. I'm like, and then wrestling, it was like, no, not a car accident per se, but like my life was one giant car accident onto my body. So that just kind of compiled. So like, yeah, right when she told me, I was like, that makes sense. Cause like, she's like, how are you just walking around? I'm like, when you played contact sports at all, or whenever or I'm just an idiot. I should just say that. I'm not even going to try and blame everyone else on it, but you ignore. It's like you get so used to small and you just ignore it, and then it just keeps compiling and compiling and compiling, and then you're like, what is it? Feeling good is a frame of reference, right? So if you've never for in a long time, you don't know what like normal is. So yeah, then she told me that, and I was like, I don't know, man. It was just so normal for so long that it just got so bad. But I don't know why I bored you with that. So wrestling, that was your actual question. Really haven't gotten back into it because of that. I might, maybe one day. I don't know. But comedy, right when clubs opened up, and here was the difference. Like L.A. and New York were two places that shut down heavy for a long period of time because of the amount, like how the population is, right? Everyone's right on top of each other. There's so many people that like when, I would assume any pandemic, but definitely this one. Um, virologists will probably tell you that the spread and everything is just going to be more imminent, or quicker. So those places stayed shut down for a while.
Hmm.
But I was able to go, especially like kind of a little bit ways in. I was able to go back to like the Midwest and do sets and that every once in a while. Because places like that, like the way they set it up and the way they can do it is there was more distance. I remember like one of the shows I went back and did, it was like everybody had their own microphone. And then like they air scrubbed the room in between shows, and then like there was limited capacity, and then everyone kind of spread out. Which like if you do stand up, is really a terrible scenario. Like because you want everybody in one area, and you kind of want to be able to look at them, and then the clubs are normally dark, So it's like you're really banking on everyone so that your eyes can like focus in. So when everyone's everywhere, you're just kind of like, but it's like you had to do, you had to do what you had to do. So since then, LA's, in New York, it's opened up. So stand up here is consistent. I just got back from Austin, Texas, did 2 shows there. So everything's back doing what it's supposed to do. But yeah, it sucked I was surprised at how, I don't want to say easy. I think everybody was just so like ready to get back to stand up. And I don't know if we just all sat around thinking about it so much, but I did notice that the first shows, especially out here that I went and did, all the comedians were like on it, man. Like I don't know, they were just sitting there with like, and it sucked because you had to go through like the months of COVID material. It's like everyone, because you say what you know, and it's like everyone's thing was like just talking about how, being quarantined or being on your own was so like what it did, right? And at first it's really funny because you're like, you kind of learn that whole when you're alone story from everybody, and like, you want to think that you do really constructive things, but we all did really stupid things, and we all thought, stupid stuff. Everybody, it was like the comedians, a big thing was like, I think everybody turned into a conspiracy theorist throughout it because you just nothing but time to think, right? And some of us don't get paid to think for a reason, and that's definitely demonstrated during the pandemic when we were thinking. So that stuff was fun, but now everything's kind of back to normal. Everybody's going back to like their normal day-to-day lives and that. So the material is becoming more relatable and more diverse. But yeah, in the beginning, I was like, dude, I think we all have the same sets as far as just like different ways of dealing with like, everybody's like, oh man, this is what I did during the pandemic, or this is what I was doing when I was by myself. Here's what my crazy parents were doing. Here was my, everybody had that story. So now that everything's back, everything's, back to normal, but stand up is doing well. And
but I feel like, with being quarantined for stand-up comedians, of course, I feel like that time in which you're not really doing what you're normally doing, which is obviously like gigs and stuff, you're getting more time to work on your craft in a sense, because that's all you're pretty much left to focus on if you're, say you're being isolated or you're quarantining rather. I think maybe in a double-edged sword type of way it was good maybe for certain comedians because it gave them more time to maybe regenerate if they were burnt out,
Yeah. No, you are 100% on the fact that at least for me, you're when I was not doing what I needed to do outside of stage performance, right? Like I'm very old school, Mike, and that's what has hurt me in wrestling and everything, right? You're supposed to get out there, you're supposed to network, you're supposed to like be on social media, and I'm old school. My whole thing is like, if I'm good, I'm gonna rub elbows with somebody, you're gonna see it, you're gonna put me on your show, and this is how we're gonna do it, right? And now it's a different game. So I was stubborn to that. I was stubborn to, getting into acting and all the other stuff that you're supposed to do to extend your brand. And being in that scenario, I sat and thought, and it was like a lot of things that I did. I mean, it was like, I want to do stand up. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's definitely helped coming out of it, of just doing the things that I needed to do, things that I probably should have done years ago. Not only just in stand up, but in my life, right? Like I just, I always say as a comic, you always want to go full fledged into comedy, but being a comedian, you are, at least myself, and I think about other guys, you're always thinking and analyzing, right? And I'm an introspective person, and I think most comics are. So you can really drive yourself nuts. Not, you know what I mean? Like you're thinking about material, but you're thinking about yourself. Right. And like comics are just prone to just either depressing themselves, anxiety, because think about it, as a comedian, you take any kind of just any kind of situation. And I would assume it's the same for like writers and stuff too. You go into a situation, you're thinking, well, then that thinking is going to go back into yourself. Right. So you could be thinking about, what's great about fast food? And you're like, and the next thing you're like, okay, what about me? Do I like fast food? Do I like fast food too much? Should I be out? And it just turns inward and you drive yourself nuts. So you want to have like something that you're focused. So I always say like something that takes the excess energy away that you can focus on while you put constructive You only have enough room for constructive thought in that towards your craft. So like with me, when I was in there, I was like, dude, I'm gonna go back to school, which I know sounds, you know, insane, but I was like, yeah, that way, and I'm better that way. Like that's how if I have to almost cloud my mind, not cloud it, but like cram it for it to work better. And so in the pandemic, I was like, dude, I'm gonna do comedy, I'm gonna do this and that, and then I was like, and also need to pursue another interest that I really had. So it was like I wound up. I mean, this wasn't too long ago, but went back to graduate school, you know, for clinical mental health therapy. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, so it's like, you know, screw it, I'll do comedy, and you know what, that's also my ADD too. I'm like, yeah, I need to do this for comedy, and then I want to get my master's degree and be a therapist. If that's not the definition of ADD, I don't know what is. But yeah, it was definitely the stand up, the writing. I don't know if did we talk about that I like submitted for Saturday Night Live during the pandemic? Well, long story short, like a friend of mine, through networking, the little bit of networking that I did do well, I got connected with Saturday Night Live, got a writer's packet, and like submitted and like did legal paperwork and stuff. And I thought I was going to get it, you know, as a writer. I think I would have been out by your woods, but didn't go through, probably for the better. But that kind of tells you too where I was going, and the, you know, once it looked like we were coming out of the pandemic, I was like, yeah, dude, stand up. Then I'm sending this writer's packet. Then I'm gonna start looking at like schools, and then so that's where I'm at, man. That's I think you just got a good idea of how my brain works just with that answer. Whatever that answer was, put that in your head, and that's what I was thinking for 2 years.
Well, that's not the only thing you picked up, too. I mean, as some may know, and if you check the mic out, you also got into podcasting with another former cast member, Abram. When did this idea of yours kind of snowball?
So I think we were coming. So I want to say a little over a year ago. Abram and I have always been, when we were around each other, even on the challenges, and Abram was on all 3 shows that I did. Mm-hmm. So he's on my Road Rule season for. He's the reason I got on it, because he punched Adam a gajillion times. And but we had met there, and Abram and I are very similar in we look at the world like toddlers, like audible toddlers. Like we see things and we're curious and we just want to like, what's that? And then, you know, and we want to talk about it, and we want to like, and sometimes we would annoy all the other people on the shows. And although we're not similar in a lot of ways, he and I are similar in that way. So whenever we would meet up, you know, outside of the shows, like I remember one time I did a show at the Comedy Store, and he came out and seen me, and like, I can't remember if Theo was on that one or not. Anyways, we had met up, and every time we got together, we would sit there and talk just about everything. And he and I's big thing is always discussions that no one was having that needed to have them. And like our limitations, that our big thing was like our limitations that we have as men in our own limitations is like what we set for ourselves is what we will and won't talk about. Right. And that's kind of always been our conversation. Why don't people talk about this? Why don't we talk about that? Whenever he moved to Los Angeles, we met up, and I went and met, you know, at his time, his wife, and you know, she was pregnant, and they're getting ready to have their kid, and we were just talking, and we were at the house, and we sat on his porch, and we were just going back and forth about a lot of things, about life, about all this. And I kind of said, you know what, man, like we have these conversations on the shows for hours. I know we have them, and something has got to be somewhat interesting there for people, you know, and I always thought that like he and I bouncing ideas off of ourselves or each other was a good thing. So I was like, you ever think about doing like a podcast? And just like, instead of just doing this between you and I, like we've been doing, like, why don't we just put this out there? Because I think out of all of our rambling, there's really good points. You know, I think like his big point was, you know, men with depression, stigmas of mental health, and very real things. And we just kind of batted it back and forth, and I was like, dude, let's do it. And both of us are not tech sound at all. Like we're 1,000,000% better now than we were at the start of this. So it started off with us literally sitting down at a table with a cell phone or with like his iPhone and just talking. And we were like, okay, we had topics we definitely wanted to discuss, right? And it was like, okay, one of them had to be suicide. One of them had to be being a father or new into marriage, or, you know, and that's what we said. And we were just gonna discuss it. We were gonna record it and put it out there. And our big thing was we wanted people to respond, you know, so we can almost have like a conversation with people. And that was the idea. Started about a year ago, and it's definitely it's been a challenge. And I love Abram. He's just like, I'll tell you that he and I, as far as two people that have met that I didn't think would get along, and, you know, coming out of the challenges, the people that I'm closest to, if you'd have told me in the beginning it was going to be Abram, I'd have been like, no. Our first meeting, I don't want to say I was talking crap to him, but it wasn't good. Like it was, what
was the first meeting?
We were on the launch thing for Road Rules.
Okay.
And we were at TRL Studios, which I don't even know. Does anyone even know what TRL is anymore? Is that a thing that's so?
I've heard of it.
Total Request Live. It was like MTV had it, you know, right there at the Times Square, right at the Viacom building, where you could oversee Times Square, and it was where they would introduce video countdown. When they played music, that tells you how long ago it was. So they had a special to start off Road Rules where they would introduce the pit crew and the guys that are coming back. So it was like him, Adam, Susie, Keena, Veronica. Yeah. So
Shane too, I think.
Shane.
Well.
Yeah. Oh, I love Shane. Why did I forget Shane? Shane is like such a. When I tell my like life story, Shane is a very pivotal part of that, and so I can't believe Whatever. We'll delve into that later. But when we were getting ready to go out, they didn't know we were there, so they would like put our videos up, and they're all just kind of like talking trash or whatever, or saying things, and like. I was getting ready to walk out. I remember being like so happy, being like, "Oh, this is so cool," you know, like look at this, and like, you know, and like right when I walked out, he said something like, "Well, I don't care if that guy's a vet. He could have just been a water boy over there." And like, dude, when I tell you that I went from like happy to like that like I was mad. And if anyone can find the footage with me, I'm normally like a happy-go-lucky dude, and I'm like sitting in the chair, and my leg is just twitching. And I'm mad. And like people that watched it were like, dude, that knew me, they're like, you were so pissed off. And like, we just know that look. And it was like, we couldn't figure out why, because you should be so happy and you're just really mad. And I was like, don't freak out. Don't do a Jerry Springer moment. Don't get like, this is a post. And he said something like right away. He goes, Dan, what did you do over there? And I think I said something like, you know what? Let me tell you something. Even the water boy in Iraq is a bigger badass than some cheesy ass reality TV person or something like that. I don't know. And I was like, and I just looked, and he like, what was great about it is he just kind of smiled, and he kind of was like, yeah, that was a douche thing to say. Like he was saying it to kind of stir up I know what he was doing, you know, like, and it was for the right reasons. Like, let's start the conflict. Let's make it interesting for the people. And I don't think he thought because he has so many friends in that are, you know, veterans in that. So now looking back at it, I was like, you could definitely see how green I was in the experience, that he's just like, now if I like went and that happened, I'd be like, okay, like that's what's supposed to happen. It's no big deal. Like, but at that time it was something so new, and you see it on TV. So you're like thinking everybody's like trying to start crap, or it's like a prison, you know, they want to see where you, and like, so what happened, I'm like, oh, me, dude? Me out of everyone on this thing, but then, you know, I look back at it after that. I think we talked that night, and we just hit it off, dude. It was like, it wound up being that initial. I'm glad it happened, because I think it like definitely we caught each other's attention, but ultimately it led to us actually getting to know each other, and he wound up being like, I think at that point, like I was like, I really want to be on the show with him. Because I think he and I would work well together, because we are different, but we're the same. And I think like our differences would actually work well, and, you know, with the things that are the same. So yeah, he and I, if you'd asked me then, would we be doing a podcast and that together? I would have been like, no, like, I don't know how well he and I are going to do together in a room for an extended period of time, but Yeah, it turned out I liked him then. You know, we obviously didn't get too much time on that first season. But then he was on the island with me, and I liked him there. You know, like even though I was having like a mental breakdown.
You guys had two different trajectories on that show, let me tell you. I mean, Abram left early, but from speaking to him, he told me the island was right in his wheelhouse. That was his favorite show, he said. And then you, of course, I mean, you obviously took like a little bit of a different type of path on that show. So you guys had like two different wavelengths on that. So right there, it's kind of like, you know, it almost seems like it should work out, right? Two opposites go together.
It should. And like, honestly, the island, had I not been like in the actual, like in the deepest part of my addictions and like problems, the island would have been right up my wheelhouse too. Honestly, I think the only reason I lasted physically through the whole thing is because of how, you know, at that time, my body was geared towards, because I was still in the Marine Corps, and like my body was really geared towards destroying it and still, you know, existing in harsh elements. Which the amount I was drinking and the amount and what I was doing, like, had I tried to do that now, man, I'd have been hospitalized and airlifted. You know what I mean? Like that's how bad it was. And I don't think people understand that. Like, go under 1,000 calories a day of what you're eating, and then drink easily a fifth of Bacardi, Jack, anything I could find a day with beers. Like, that's how much I was drinking every day and not eating. So that spells death to anyone. And like the fact that my body existed to the point that it did is, I don't know, man. When I look back at it, I'm shocked. And especially from what I know now about what alcohol and drugs and that can do to the body short term and organs and that. Had I not been screwed up on that, I actually really liked the game. I liked how, because it was very challenging. And I would say mentally, I don't think there's anything they've ever done before or since that would do what that did to each of the cast members.
I don't think that would be sanctioned.
No, I don't think they'll ever do it again, because people got to remember, when people came back from that, there was long-term health issues that came out. I think like Jen or somebody had to have like gastrointestinal surgery or something, because the body wasn't something. Guys, bear with me loosely on this. I want to say something like the peptides in your body, you know, that break down stuff. Like they weren't generating enough because we weren't eating enough for so long.
Yeah.
That it literally affected when people went back to normal, like, intake of food. Their bodies couldn't handle it. And so there was a lot of long-term things that happened that I think the producers were like, "Oh man, we didn't think about this." But it was pretty tough. But like, I can't say it was that tough because I was drinking the whole time. If it was that tough, like it was out of any challenge, yeah, it was. I would say hands down. I don't watch them now. Maybe they're way more intense. But when I went to Cutthroat, that was a vacation. Like, I remember sitting there almost bored. Like, because my last experience, although my brain was mush, was the island. And then I go to Cutthroat, and I'm sitting in a nice house eating consistently and, like, just listening to people whine. And it was just annoying. I was like, and I mean, I think on that show, I was 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah.
I think it said,
in sobriety. So it was like, I was literally like on edge with myself. And like, so everything that everyone was doing was very annoying to me, but for my own reasons. Like, it was my fault, you know, like, I don't want to say my fault, but I was going through a lot of stuff. So that probably wasn't the best time to like be dealing with all of that. And once again, Abram and Derek, who are like my two angels, they're both angels, although they can be devils at times. They're both angels. Were great to have there, because it was like you could just go talk to them and like have a non-challenge like conversation with them. You know, it's when you go on those things, there's certain people that are just so obsessed with playing the game, and then there's people that really can just exist in it and be normal people, and like definitely Derek is great at that. Abram's great at that. Johnny's really good at pretending he is, but he's
bananas.
Yeah, but he's pulling them strings the whole time, which I always knew. You know what I mean? It was like great. Like, you talk to him and you could feel where he's like, yeah, so maybe, and it's like, I know what you're doing, dude. I don't I just need a minute. But yeah, that's why I think my friendships are even stronger with those guys. So you had a previous question, and I once again I told you this is what's going to happen. We're going to
Well,
go everywhere
let
except
me
where we're
ask
supposed to
you
go.
though. So you obviously had what you were dealing with on the island. We saw it unfold with like the amount of drinking that you were doing. Was this something like you were having like right up until that point before you went on the show, or was it the show and the heightened setting that brought that out?
Oh man, so I don't think we had this talk. You know what? We'll get down into it. So I had drinking issues since I was 19, right?
Okay.
So I come from a family where alcoholism is very dominant on it. Okay, like I had an uncle that was a psychologist that literally drank himself to death in a gas station parking lot. You know, my dad had issues with it. My dad was able to like get out of it, you know, without very little scars. Um, I have an uncle that's a Vietnam vet, you know, 2 Silver Stars, Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart. Guy held his own guts, came back. He has had issues with it, and then I'm with it. My whole family was with it. So there is this, I hate to say demon because I think it takes away from the ownership of it. Like we have, as I've learned, we have kind of a genetic um, makeup in us that whenever we take the alcohol, we like it, man. And it and it I was definitely I carried that on. And so starting from about 19, I was drinking, or 18, I was drinking a lot. I remember like before I went to boot camp, I drank every single day. I was intoxicated for a year before, like at least each night before I went. And to the point that when I went to boot camp, I was like, now what I know is I was suffering from, I thought it was just nerves. You know what I mean? Like you get in there, you're like, oh, you're getting yelled at. So that's like, but like, dude, I was like shaking, and I'm like looking back now, I'm like, dude, you were literally going through like withdrawal. Like it was, So that happened. For a while, it wasn't that bad, but like whenever I had a chance to go party, I partied to the extreme. That was just, I mean, I was drinking till I blacked out, drinking till, and at first it was fine because I was always such a happy-go-lucky kind of person, and you'd always get the fun side of me. Like every once in a while I do something kind of crazy, but it was fun. It was fun. Fast forward, went to Iraq, came back, and that's when like the drinking, definitely like a year after, it started taking a really dark turn, right? So like right now, I don't know if anybody are fans of psychology in any way, but like, dude, Freud and Jung and those guys in the beginning kept talking about like the conscious and unconscious, right? Like you have things that are underneath the surface that are unresolved. And whenever you can get into that, whether it's in dreams or, intoxication or anything like that, where that stuff starts to come out, it will literally affect how you are without you even really knowing why. And you start doing things that are just very dysfunctional. And I think that's what was happening. I had a lot of unresolved issues. So when the drinking happened, definitely a dark side came out and things that were so not me. And I want to mean like when I tell you, like when you get into like when you wake up the next day and you kind of go back to what you were doing and the actions that you are committing are so foreign to you, it's almost as if you're possessed and someone had another body. That's definitely, you have issues that need to be spoken about and whatnot. So what the cycle began is that started to happen. So the guilt would come to me in the morning, and obviously now serotonin depletion, all this other stuff. So I'd be like depressed, anxious, regretful, and so I drink to numb that. And then this thing just started, man. And it was like, it got to a point where I always could function before it, right? I mean, literally, I drank moonshine and went and got a first-class PFT the next day in the Marine Corps. Like, that's how I used to perform, physically. But at this point, it was starting to break me down so bad that physically I was inferior than where I was. Mentally, I was inferior, and I was really breaking down. About 2006, so it was about a year, 2 years after I got home, my drinking and my actions had gotten so bad, and no one even knew about this, that like literally I had like a revolver, a 357 Colt Python revolver, and I was literally like putting it in my mouth and my head, loaded, like just to see. And I wasn't like I wanted to kill myself per se, but I was doing something to get some kind of like feeling, some adrenaline, because like what I felt, my normal reactions, my normal feelings weren't doing it anymore. That sounds odd, right? Like now when I look at it, it just sounds really dysfunctional, and sadly that's normal, right? So people that are in depression or the fits of like, addiction or anything like that, they'll cut themselves. They'll do some kind of masochism. For some reason, I think my masochism was like scaring myself to death to feel something. And at that point, I just remember, dude, you talk about just hating myself, being depressed, being mean, doing really dysfunctional things. The relationships I was in, I was evil. I was freaking evil, right? Like I wasn't beating the crap out of anybody. Like my aggression stayed towards girls, or towards guys, not girls. But it was like, even my relationships with girls, like I was getting mean. Like I would start to say real mean things, and this is just not me, dude. Like my mother raised me, and my dad raised me to just always respect females. Like they're so. I just seen something really, and I hated myself for it. Then road rules happened, okay, which you would think would be like, don't go on that thing. But off of a dare from my roommates at the time, I sent a tape in. Long story short, I get on it, and it saved me for a little bit, right? I had something exciting, something new, and the drinking was still a lot, but like, my behavior got better. My outlook on life got better. I think I still showed a lot of dysfunction when I went on there, and I was still really messed up going on there, but it was a little bit better. Come back from that, I go right back into being terrible again. Friggin' the island comes back, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll do this again.
That was a perfect frickin' storm.
Yeah, so I remember I quit drinking for like a week before I went on. Longer than that. I want to say like a month. And I was like, I'm gonna get it together. I'm gonna try. Like, this is gonna be my like rehab. This island, right? And I get there, and God, it wasn't even a day. I got there and saw they had liquor, and I just started drinking like a fiend, dude. And I blacked out. I didn't even have a bed. It's like the first night they all drew on me, and I had to go find a bed. Like I woke up in the middle of the night at like 2 a.m. Didn't even know where I was, what the rules of the game was. Nothing. I didn't find out the rules of the game till like 3 days in. Like
How much
I remember.
Of the show do you remember?
Bits and pieces. I mean, I remember more than I thought I did. Honestly, like It's like that recollection. Like I didn't think I thought it was all blur. Mm-hmm. And then like when I go to tell stories, I do remember. It's like okay, stuff pops in my head. I'm like, I remember like here's what's crazy. I can't remember an overview of a lot. But I can remember specific conversations or specific instances whenever people bring it up. Like if you get me started, or like then I can start. But like overall, like you would think that I would remember 5 weeks on a beach with no food, very, very very intensely, and I don't. Right? I remember briefly my relationship with Robin. I remember her punching me in the face at one point.
Wow.
Yeah. And
did they show that? Do you know?
No.
Oh, no. Wow.
No. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, at least I had that going for me. Like I was scared. Like I couldn't control like my fluctuation in anger at that point. So there was a lot of times where I was flipping out and doing things that I don't even really understand why I was doing them or anything like that. And in that instance, when she hit me, I was so glad that something in my body like went reverse. Like she hit me, and instead of getting like, I like sobered up and walked away. I remember that walking out into like, I just walked away from her. And at that point, like before that, I think someone like somebody said something to me like 2 days before, and I flipped out, dude. And I like jumped up and like they'd tackle me, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. Like that scared me. So whenever Robin like hit me, the worst. Oh my God, man! When I think I got so scared, I was like, dude, what if I would have just snapped and did something terrible? I mean, I would have never been able to forgive myself or be forgiven. You know what I mean? So I'm really glad, and I don't know if it was just something still left in me and that rotten brain that said, dude, walk away. Like, don't. So in a lot of ways, man, like whatever she did, it knocked some logic into me, and it was silly anyways. Like I think she was doing. So you gotta remember, she was not doing well on that show either. Okay, yeah. So we were not the best together, and I think I think there was things about each other that we really like. Like I remember that. I mean, there's her sense of humor and everything like so. there was a good thing to it, but you know, when we both drinking and we were both really into it, we were dealing with our own stuff, and getting together was definitely not conducive for either of us. So I think I was doing impersonations of everybody on the island, and I used to be able to do them really well. And like Johnny would get me doing them, and I could do Kenny, I could do Johnny, I could do like everybody at that time. It's like a parrot. And so everyone would get together and they'd have me do them, and they'd laugh because it was like, at that point, being around them so long, I could like dead on. And I think Kellyanne had asked me to do her. Right. And then, so I did Kellyanne to her. She laughed, and then she goes, do Johnny. Because Johnny's impression is like him making fun of Kellyanne, saying really mean things. Because I joked around. And I was like, dude, if you take all the charm and humor away from Kenny, you have Johnny. Because like Kenny says things that are like funny. Like Kenny will rip on you and it's funny. Like he would roast me, and I would want to get mad, but I couldn't.
That's that New Jersey humor, man.
Yeah. It was so funny. And I'm like, and then Johnny would just say things that like you would like, you'd have to go, he's just kidding. It would really piss you off. And like, you know, and there's just a few times where I'm like, man, if we weren't on a show, you know what I mean? Like if I was in a bar with you and like you were saying this shit to me, especially with like how messed up I was at the time, it'd be different. But what he would say to other people, you know, so he would always say things that cut to the core of you. So he would do that to cut. So I was doing an impersonation of Johnny ripping on Kellyanne. Well, Robin heard it and thought I was like tearing into Kellyanne. So she came to Kellyanne's defense and thinking I was like calling her, you know, all this stuff, and just punched me. Like just.
Did everybody see this too?
Yep.
Oh wow, that's rough.
So I remember this. I walked out because. Before that, I don't really, like I said, I gave you like kind of a brief, what I do remember. Can't remember the specifics. She hit me, and I like walked off, and then like production came out and like found me and kind of was like, was everything all right? Like, and I pretty much even then was like, okay, we're both wasted. We're both idiots. This shouldn't be, please don't take this serious. Like, don't take it serious on her. Don't take it serious on me. Like, this isn't a scenario. Like, to me, it was like, this isn't a cast member hits a cast member scenario. You get what I'm saying?
Did they ask you, like, if you wanted to send her home for that?
They didn't ask if I wanted to send her home, I don't think. God, I don't think. Like I said, Mike, you're asking me to remember. I just remember, like, sitting there and kind of, like, when they came to talk to me to see how I was doing, I was pretty much right away, like, we just, that went too far, and I don't feel threatened by her. I don't feel anything like that. It was silly. You know what I mean? It was like it was silly, and I think even they knew that. You know what I mean? I think it's different when two people are arguing and there's legitimate anger there, and then they fight. Because the thing with me and Dave was more of an issue.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that was more of an issue than the me and Robin thing. Like it was. And me and David didn't ever come to blows. You know what I mean? It was just like, but they had to keep us separated, and you know, and then he lost his damn mind too. And I may have contributed to that. I don't like
the way that got like kind of, you know, portrayed was so funny. You had Dave kind of preaching to the choir about your drinking problems, right? And the way you almost see that foreshadow was like so beautiful. Like he talks about you and is like trying to plot your demise for your drinking issues. And then later on that episode just goes completely off the wall with his own drinking and then just quits.
Dude, like the next night or the next. And I stopped him. Like at one point I stood up when he was trying to leave. And I stood at the steps. And I was like, don't go home like this, dude. Like I know we have an issue. I think it was like me and Dunbar or me and Kahada might have been sitting up there with him. And he was like, I want to go. It was like the next day. And I said, don't. And my thing was like, you and I think at that time I was like, I do kind of remember being like, your and I's thing is stupid. Like just, and he's like, it's not about you and me. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm not like egotistical enough to think so. But like, I don't know why there was something in me that was like, what he did was kind of silly too, because it's like, here's the thing that I could say about me that I've learned. In my worst, there's something that shows to people that make them sympathetic towards me, or there's something that makes people see that underneath the chaos or the stupid things that I do, that there's a good person, right? And I'm lucky for that. I'm lucky for whatever that is, man, because that has got me out of so much trouble, and it's got me, on the right, straight and narrow. So I think when I got there, even though I was partying, even though I was doing a lot of stuff, the guys liked me, and so did the girls. There was something that, even though I was yelling and flipping out at them at the time, they would there's that, he's not.
It's like you had such a good social game without trying.
Yeah, and he was
that made you get far in these games.
Yeah, and I think that everyone knew that, okay, he's a good, decent dude. I think with me, I'm not plotting against you. That's just, it. I wear everything on my, so it's it's not in my DNA. I can't. My only thing is, if I have an issue, it will be dealt with face to face, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go behind your back. I'm not going to do that. And in a lot of ways, that's why I suck at the challenges, man, because I'm just not motivated to do what is necessary to win, right? So he's thinking, oh, let's get rid of it. And little does he know that for whatever reason, everyone has found this soft spot in their heart for me. As chaotic as I was so early, there's no reason for them to have it. They did. So right when it happened, I remember Johnny was and he wasn't the first one. Someone else, I'm trying to think of it. It might have been Dunbar. Someone else was hey man, this dude's already trying to make a move towards you. And I was what? And I remember they were don't say anything. Don't do it. And I'm I won't. And I remember him sitting there and he just has this smile, this arrogant smile, or he had it. And I just remember staring at him. And I'm and it boiled all day. And I'm I'm going to fucking knock this. And I'm all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is my plot. I said, when they're all distracted and he's by himself and the cameras are away, I'm going to look right at him, and I'm going to let him know that I know everything. That he better watch his step. He better just, I didn't want this to play out in front of the camera at all. I remember they all went over towards the shower for something, and he was sitting at that bar, and that's when I looked over and I said, I want you to know, I know what what you're doing. And if you got a problem, you come to me. You don't blah, blah, blah. And the way he reacted, I remember it was he purposely reacted in a way that would get the attention of the cameras. And then that's why when you see it, it looks as though I just walked over and started but it wasn't. He and I know what he was doing. He wanted the cameras. He wanted the cameras, A, for, his own
camera time.
Yeah. And B, he's if the cameras are here, this dude won't hit me. Or if they're paying attention, nothing will happen. Right. And he underestimated how just stupid I was. So that's when, and that aggravated me. And so that's why I'm just and I'm grinding my teeth and I'm trying not to because I know his fate, everything I wanted to. Yeah. I've never wanted to. There's times in my life where I'm about to hit somebody and I'm really having to fight to not do it. Right. And I mean, now those days are, no, they're not completely gone. LA traffic, at least once or 3 times a day. But that really irked me. And so I think the way that looked was not so much the situation, but how he reacted to it. And trying to not freak out because my first thing is I didn't want it on camera, and then he brought the cameras in. And then in my mind, it was or what he did, and this all could be in my brain too because I was not mentally well at all, was that he purposely did that to bring the cameras in. And my thing was this isn't a camera thing. This is a man-to-man thing.
Right.
That irritated me more. And that's why I think it just looks so dysfunctional. It just looks. And then I recently, not recently, probably a little over a year ago, went back and watched it because I couldn't watch that season, man. It was watching
that's the thing I hear. That's the thing I hear. A lot of people have trouble watching themselves back on TV. It's maybe a weird thing for them, just seeing yourself do something, or maybe in some cases, it's just really hard to watch from a trauma standpoint. Where did you maybe fall on that tight line of not watching?
Trauma, definitely. That is a part in my life that, although it was necessary to happen, is not something I look fondly upon. And that's where kind of my conflict with the challenges comes from. I'm very grateful that I got to do it and I got to do all that. But at the time, that was probably the worst representation of myself that I had in my entire life. All 3 of them, even in Cutthroat, where I was sobered up, I was still so messed up in my head, trying to just resolve things that I was not there. I really wasn't there how it should have been. So in 3 shows, you see this this complete arc of dysfunction with me. And so when I watch it, it's a reminder of where I was. And I like to really aim forward and use the lessons of what happened as a way to like be proactive and be positive. So when you go back and you look and you're in the throes of it and you know it's not going to get any better anytime soon. You know what I mean? It's like I'm never going to see myself get better in this. I'm just going to see the worst. And when you start to see it, it's weird. Like you look at your eyes and there's times where you know what you're thinking, and that's like that hits you in the feels because you kind of go back there. And then there's times where you're looking at yourself and you don't know what you're thinking, and you're looking at a stranger. And that's just a very odd thing to watch. And like with me, man, and I would assume it's like everything, that's a very real emotional time for me. Like when people saw on the island and even Road Rules and even, you know, Cutthroat is such a real, unfiltered kind of look at just what I was going through. And I'm not somebody that I've embraced the fact that like whatever dysfunctional things that I do, I would love people to learn from it. And like, dude, laugh at me, you know, look at me and be like, what a joke. If it'll help you be like, I'll never be like that dude, then great. Then great, do that. But so watching myself do that it's hard because I mean, I had a breakdown after the island where I was literally taken into custody in a Miami airport. And because of that trauma, dude, I wasn't able to get on airplanes or go near airports or anything for, you know, when did Cutthroat happen? So Cutthroat, I literally
Cutthroat was 2010.
Yeah, so
then I think the island was 07, maybe?
Yeah, maybe 2 years. So up until the Cutthroat, I was scared to death of planes and like that's how traumatic whatever happened in Miami did. You know, I mean, when we were coming back from Cutthroat or from the island, man, I went into custody in the Miami airport and I basically got put into like a detox tank kind of thing in Miami. Then I wound up getting transferred to and I didn't have my phone. It was really scary, and I was having a mental breakdown, and I was in a drug like literally I'm sitting there with people going through drug withdrawals and stuff, and I'm just in the throes of it, and I'm also dealing with just breaking down in general psychologically as well as like chemical dependencies and that. And then I wound up going to the VA, and you know, and then they put me in a hotel room, and I was putting stuff up against the doors because I thought people were trying to get in, and I was talking, and I don't remember these conversations. I remember like my sergeant, because I was supposed to go to Bridgeport for cold weather training. I had to miss it because I was like literally having a breakdown. And he was like, yeah, man. He told me like years later, he's like, you were calling me, telling me about people trying to get in your room and all this other stuff. Like I was having, like, for whatever reason, it seemed like some version of psychosis. And that's terrifying, dude. And so somehow that whole scenario linked to, I just put it towards being scared of airplanes. I don't like it was, and that's how trauma works, man. That's just, if you can't put it towards the right thing, it'll go towards anything. And so I had this complete breakdown as a human where I literally was scared to go outside of like my immediate comfort zone. And I thought I was going to be like that for the rest of my life. And it was really scary. And basically sobering up, I had to like get back on an airplane. And I started off by like going to like the airport and like walking into like the carousel, like the luggage carousel, like just slow exposure, you know, because I was working with a cognitive therapist at the time. And and then eventually I got on a plane to go see Shane in Chicago. Yeah. Really? Yeah, 45 minutes. So from St. Louis to Chicago was only 45 minutes. So I was like, that was my first, like, so I went there, and my mom was awesome. She was like, you need to do this. And she was going for a meeting. So I went with her, and I remember I was like getting on the plane, and I was like in tears. Like I was so scared. And this is weird. I'd flown so many times for so long, and all of a sudden this thing just, but that's, guys, that's like to let you know about trauma. That's what it can do to you. So don't ever feel bad if that happens. Obviously, it's going to seem not logical, but that's basically the way trauma is stored in your brain. It doesn't make sense because it's stored in parts. You know, it's
almost out of body experience.
Yeah. So yeah, whenever you store stuff like a traumatic event, you store it in your sympathetic nervous system. And there's an autonomic nervous system. You have your parasympathetic, sympathetic. When you store things like that in your fight or flight or your sympathetic, it stores out of order. So whenever your brain recalls something, it goes immediately. It rings your stress responses because it doesn't make sense. So you go into this like physical feeling of like of fear, even though it shouldn't. So the logic doesn't lie in that, but it can be patched into just things that don't make any, you know, that aren't really the source, right? So that was my thing with airports. Long story short. So got back. So going on to Cutthroat, man, I was getting over like a new phobia and that wasn't the start, man. Like, honestly, when I look back at it, I went to a gas chamber like a year after I got back from Iraq, and like I'd done the gas chambers in the military a bunch of times. Well, all of a sudden I was scared to death of gas masks. I was freaking out. I couldn't do it. Like, it was, yeah, like, and I'd done them so many times. Like, so that's just, once again, a lesson to anybody who's going through issues. If you have anything that's similar to this, it's probably trauma. If you go see, somebody, they can work you through that. And honestly, all they got to do is take your traumatic events, pull it out, and have you process it, and like your parasympathetic, and literally that stuff that you're experiencing will go away, or it'll like that is how you can be fixed. So just remember that, because that's what happened to me. And so I'm literally getting over all of that, and as I'm going on to Cutthroat. Cutthroat was my second plane ride. I had 45 minutes, and then I fly to Cincinnati, New York, England, Czech Republic. You know what I mean? Like, then I spend all day on planes. So, going into Cutthroat, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a dude who's coming out of like addiction, a mental breakdown, so
the
very
island.
Very new to me. So, yeah. So back to what you're saying. Yeah. Watching myself is it's a reminder of all that, which is good to go back and see, because it needs to be something I remind myself of, but it is hard. It is hard. You see it, and it just kind of brings all of it back, and you're like, damn, dude, like that was not something that I ever want to experience again. And that's kind of the reason I got into what I'm doing now, is because I want to, if I ever encounter people that are in that scenario, that I would be able to help. And that's also the background to mine and Abram's podcast, is literally discussing things like that, because I wish somebody's having conversations with me or us about things like this. It could have helped a lot in those scenarios, or pushed me to do the right thing. And that's kind of the mission statement behind Dan and Abram versus Life. It's just having discussions about stuff like that for some reason a bunch of people go through. We just don't ever talk openly about it. I don't know if it's shame or whatever, but doing that, sometimes whatever you're discussing, someone else needs to hear it, and it can give them hope. And that's where we're at on that. So I think I just answered 2 questions, although they might have been an hour apart. And I just want to say you're welcome. Okay, I told you.
Well, I got a question for you now, since you're kind of in this little loop now with what you've been kind of gearing towards. I've been talking about this, and I'm sure other people have talked about it in other spaces as well. I think that there should be a little bit of an aftercare system in place for people that leave reality television, in terms of what they go through with their mental health, post show, like once they exit off, because it's like a very swift transition from filming a show back into normal life. I feel like there should be a little bubble in place for maybe a week or so before they go back into their normal life. What is maybe your stance on that?
You have a very good point, but here's the reality of it. You're absolutely right. No, you don't want to do that if you're a producer, because that means your next shows are going to be less interesting, because you want the dysfunction.
Right.
Sadly, I mean, it is what it is. Like they're going to tell you they don't want it. They want good television, but what's good television? If everybody's mentally well adjusted, you know what I mean? Like, even I was still a wreck, but I was boring after I went on Cutthroat. You know what I mean? I was boring. So
and that's probably what ended up being not necessarily your downfall, but maybe why they didn't want to proceed with having you back.
Oh yeah, that and also I think we mutually were like, I mean, it was only a couple weeks into Cutthroat. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Really? So
I was kind of
like, once it was done, like that was done.
Yeah, I was done. I was done. I was done before I got eliminated. Like, I think in my head I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it was like I needed to go back and do it sober and try to do my best. But even then, I was like, I realized, dude, this whole putting myself back together thing's gonna take a while, and so I don't need to be coming back to do these, dude. That's one thing. Back to what you were saying, okay, you have to remember, and this is going to sound really harsh, but I'm just going to be real. People going on to the shows already have underlying probably mental health issues, right? Whether it's narcissism, anxiety disorder, trauma. That's why they were picked. Okay, their personalities reflect something that makes them different than everyone else on first sight. You know what I mean? On initial sight. right? So they're casting people through interview processes where they're spending little bits of time with them each time. So in that window, they have to show you something that is interesting enough for you to put them on a television show and pay them. So clearly there's underlying issues inside of there that reflect in those interviews that make them pick you. So as far as an aftercare, I do agree that when you leave the show, there is like a withdrawal because, even being in that scenario, you're releasing dopamine because it's something out of the ordinary. You have cameras on you, interviews, you're the center of attention. This is why you see a lot of celebrities have substance abuse issues because, you know what I mean? They need something to release that dopamine because they got it from getting their pictures taken, being on movies, all that stuff. Reality TV is the same way. You have attention put on you, so you are releasing dopamine. It's feeding a narcissism. So then all of a sudden one day you go from being the center of attention to not having any attention on you. And there's a withdrawal there. There really is. Like you go into kind of a depression. I think every time I left the shows, I acted even, like the Island, I had a complete breakdown for a long time. That was for other reasons. Even Cutthroat for like a couple days, I kind of was walking around quiet and paranoid, even around people at my normal job and everything. And there is a withdrawal from it. I 100% agree with you. Even in a week, I think what's a week? Maybe a session, 2 sessions. I mean, it's going to take more than that. Plus, if they have underlying issues, I've also watched people transform. Just they probably walked on with underlying issues, and the show itself became an issue and turned them into something completely different. So the mental health ramifications from shows are much deeper than I would say in aftercare. I think that it would be awesome if they initiated that as far as like a program for people that feel like they're having a really hard time since the shows. I think that would be really awesome for them to facilitate, but more on the notion that it could be continuous, right? 6 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Which is kind of what I felt like the military was doing. Like when we came back from Iraq, they had like this demobilization, like kind of discussion with us where they kind of told us what we might be going through when we got home. And I remember all of us laughing, being like, that's not going to happen to us. And then you get home and you're literally doing exactly what they're saying, like word for word. But there was always this extension when I got back of like even Vietnam vets and that saying, go talk to somebody. Even if you don't think you need it, you need to go talk to somebody. And there was that constant push, right? And so when you're not ready, you're not going to utilize it. So you can go, and if you're really not into it, you're not going to do what you need to do. That's another thing I would say. Like a lot of those people leave and they don't think anything's wrong with them. So they're not going to go, they're not going to take you up on that offer.
Right.
But I think it's always good. I think it would be good for them to leave it out there so that people, if they are like a person like me who came back and was like really screwed up and was like, yeah, man, I need to go do something. I think it would be cool. I think you have a really good point. But yeah, I mean, like when it comes to, here's my stance on it anyways, guys. People need to pursue counseling and that like they would pursue the gym. Okay, not like a hospital, right? You don't go to a therapist because you're broken. You go to just make sure you're at your best conditioning you can in your brain, right? You go to the gym to work your muscles out. You go to going to counseling can be the same thing. I guarantee you everybody has something that's unresolved, right? So, you could always just go if even to better your relationships, better your, and there's all different kinds of different kinds of psychoanalysis and that people can do to make you better, So I just want to start off by saying, I think everyone can benefit from it. I think you'd be especially if you just dive right into it, I think people would be really shocked at how good it is or how well it works for them, because it's a very simple process. There's no voodoo to it. Your brain is your brain, it's neurology, right? When everyone here has been, God, what was the stats I was looking at? I think it's 1 in 4. 1 in 4, I want to say, is it FDA? 1 in 4 or 1 of 5? 1 of 5 have been victims of sexual assault of some form. I think 1 in 3 have seen some version of domestic violence. And so when we talked about this earlier, it's frame of reference. You think something's normal when it's not, right? Because the only frame of reference that we have for normality is our own eyes. So how do we know what we're seeing is, you know what I mean? Because normal's in the eye of the beholder. And everyone thinks they're fine. I just watched a whole documentary on John Wayne Gacy, who's literally the textbook definition of antisocial psychopath, narcissist. But if you listen to these tapes, this dude thinks he's fine. He's literally he thinks, you know what I mean? Nobody thinks they're. So I think it benefits everyone. I think you bring a really good point. I think people that go through reality TV need to realize that they were put in a situation where they're in a state of stress for long periods of time, and that has long-term ramifications. That has long-term effects. Just the situation alone, because when you get there right away, it's a game, and you can feel it, man. And you have no distractions. There is no television. There is no. So you're sitting inside a small area with everyone that's playing a game, and you can't be sure if every conversation you're having is being used against you or used for you or manipulated or plotted on. So right away, you're kind of like, at least with me, my heart rate was up all the time. I couldn't even sleep, because I felt like you were in it. And you spend weeks in that, man. Like, that's going to have long-term effects. So just that alone, let alone you walk in there with issues, which I guarantee you, everyone that has ever been on the challenge has something underneath that they may not have told the viewers about, but it's been, and I can tell you, and I will never tell other people's secrets, but I can tell you what you know about these people is the tip of the iceberg. Everyone has way more intense stories than what even the show allows you to know. It's just because when you're in there, you get to know them and you hear things you're like, and it's just things they're not ready to share. So also keep in mind, that's what everyone's bringing in. Stressful situation, underlining trauma as is. You know what I mean? That's going to bring out. That's why you're getting what you're getting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, if that makes it, yeah. I think everyone would benefit from it. I just think MTV or Junior Murray go broke trying to pay for everybody's like.
I think maybe their direction's kind of shifted on some other stuff now. I mean, they've kind of gotten more focused on like some of the visual aspects of the shows now with some of the over the top pyrotechnics and like saturation that's been going on, but that's a discussion for a different day. So I take it like have you been getting like any of the All-Star OG calls that Mark Long project that he's No, really, not even an availability.
No, they haven't talked to me since 2013, and that was an email.
Was that like an invite?
2013. What was Battle of the X's? What was the first Battle of the X's?
That would have been 12.
That was the last email I got, and I didn't answer it. So I'm fairly certain that they don't have my contact information, and I don't care that they don't have my contact information. I've bumped into Mark Long since then at the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset a few years ago, and said hi and everything, but there's never been a discussion. And I'm not worried about it. You know what I mean? I'm not. It's like I said, right now I'm in school, so it's like the program that I'm in is literally one class ends, the other one starts. So it's like it's continuous. So until the only time I'd ever think about probably doing it is at one point I have to do like practicums where I have to go work and do like face-to-face therapy and stuff like that. There's a lot of hours that I have to, especially in California. I think it's like 3,000. But I would do it to get the money to be able to go do the practicums and live. But other than that, man, right now I'm not interested in it. They're not interested in me. There's been no conversation either way.
Well, just to put things into perspective, had you gotten onto that X's show or accepted the call or email, whatever, you probably more than likely it would have been you and Robin teamed up on it.
Yeah, it would have been. That's who they were going with. So, yeah. And I think Mark Long got the call, which was that his first time? But that was after he retired, right?
That was his last show until just now with the All-Star one.
Guys, let me tell you something. When I have not been able to do a show, that is when some of the most iconic moments have happened. I was supposed to be Adam on the Duel 2. And, yeah, I had to cancel the day they were leaving. Yeah. And Adam went as my replacement, and CT and him had that epic where CT's going through the wall like a, Jason, a horror movie victim. And yeah.
Holy smokes.
So Adam would not have been there had I was the original person cast, and I had another mental breakdown. So couldn't leave. So there you go. You're welcome.
Well, you talk about a domino effect in the history of not only the challenge, but reality television.
I have affected television with my very not presence. I'm the only person who has had such an effect without anyone knowing about it, because I didn't go. Adam replaced me, and then I got a call that night after CT did it to come replace CT.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I called it.
Why didn't you go? It's because you had a breakdown?
Oh yeah, I was still screwed up. Yeah, I was trying. That was going to be my first attempt to come back, but dude, I had fallen off the wagon, I think right before, and it was bad. It was really bad.
You were set to leave and everything, like the
paper
and everything.
I was cast. I even filled out on my passport. I still have the information from New Zealand. Like literally, I was supposed to go. It was I would say hours before my flight. And I literally had a discussion with my mom and my dad, and they were like, I think we were up to like 2 a.m, and they were like, if you think you should go, you should go. And then it was one of those, and everyone just was like, you shouldn't go, dude. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And like, my dad was funny. He's like, I can't drive to New Zealand to get you. Because they had to drive to Miami to get me. I couldn't fly. So they had to drive and get me out of a hotel room. So he's like, if you freak out in New Zealand, you could be put in jail or whatever. And then I don't know how to get you. You're on an island, dude. So it was like that's what it came down to. Honest to God. And so, yeah, I had a complete breakdown. And there was also other stuff happening in my life with my family. Other issues that kind of led to that too. So it was just bad. It was really bad. And I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have even said yeah. I shouldn't have even entertained the idea. So yeah, that, and then I was supposed to be on the Ruins.
Okay.
And they pulled the kibosh on that one. They put the kibosh on that one. Yeah, because I sent in the information, and at that point, I had gotten put on medication for PTSD, and it was a lot of it. And they, you had to put on your forms what you're on. And I think like the insurance company got wind of that, and they were like, "I don't know, man. I'm bringing no, good luck to him, but we're gonna bring a dude who's like on like mood stabilizers." And
so, were you surprised that you actually ended up doing another challenge then and making your way onto Cutthroat?
I didn't think I was gonna get the offer. Yeah, I thought after the Ruins it was over.
They didn't call you for the one in between the Ruins and Cutthroat, right?
What was that one?
I think it was the one in Whistler, Canada. Fresh meat too.
Yeah, no, I didn't even get a call for that. I think that's why I assumed it was over.
Okay.
And then they called me for Cutthroat, and I was like, and at that point, I had sobered up, and I was like, you know what? And I said in my mind, I was like, this is the perfect way to end it. Like kind of my journey. Okay, like I showed them how screwed up I was. This could be kind of the road to my recovery, is to go back to the place where like. What's the best way I can put this? Go into the belly of the beast and see if you can come out of it. So it was a challenge to me, my life, and kind of a way to go, okay, I'm going to go on this thing and not embarrass my entire family. So in my mind, I was like, it was a good positive start to like a new life. Then I got there and realized, holy cow, there's still some pieces I need to put back together before I, get here. But it was all with good intentions. But when they called, I was like, this might be my absolute last chance to do this. And I need to end it on a positive note. So that was my opinion. And when I went there, I was like, okay, maybe there's a possibility that this could like restart something and I could be an actual good competitor. And then I got there, and like I said, man, it was a few weeks in. I was like, I'm done with this. You got your Johnnies, your Wests, and there's a whole new crop, and I don't even know any of these guys that love it, man. They love and I like competing. I just don't take myself serious enough, to like, what I mean? Like to me, life or death is life or death. Right? Anything less than that's not life or death. So to get the best motivation out of me, that's not like, dude, I think I played like a dodgeball tournament at my job one time, and I got super, and I was more competitive into that than I've ever been on a challenge. Like I cared more about that thing for some reason than I did for a challenge that had, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. No idea why, because my brain's stupid and it's broken. But like, that's like the only. For some reason, it just never. When I get there, the experience, and I was like kind of looking into this. There's like, if you go into like different schools of psychology, like Alfred Adler and Carl Jung, and that they always talk about like kind of your internal motivations, right? Like there's something in us. So like, are you an introvert as far as how you think, and are you a senses over feelings person? And there's just certain components to us that activate for some reason, right? And it may not make any logical sense to anyone else. It's just kind of how your psyche's geared, and that's kind of how mine is, man. It's like I'll find more reasons to compete for personal reasons than I will for money. Money doesn't get me going. If the scenario is, to me, like in that it was set up to be just kind of this game show dysfunctional scenario, I was more or less interested in the psychological aspect of seeing how everyone reacts and talks and does it. It was more like a people watching thing than that was more interest to me than actually winning any of the competition. So I don't think I'm good for it. I think I'm totally crappy for people to watch. Like, you want to see people that are super into it and they're like, then they'll do anything. You know what I mean? That's the fun of it. And I don't provide that. So it's like, I think it's better for the fans that I don't. I think I serve more of a purpose for everyone to look back on and go, Jesus, that dude was messed up. And then for me to go, yeah, I was messed up. Than it is to go back and compete, because I don't think I think my value has already been used for those shows. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how I view it, man. So as far as getting called back for, like, listen, I never say never, man. I never say never. And honestly, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I'd have said no. No, yeah. Hands down. Not ever going to do it again. But like I said, I've coming back in contact with a lot of these guys, and like, there's that interest, but like a serious interest, no, man. And I can entertain it, but right now, if they were to call and be like, "Can you?" I'd be like, "No, I can't." Like, I mean, I have school, I have comedy, I have things going on. But like I said, who knows, man? In like a little bit, when I start my like practicums and hours, I've always been thinking, like, how am I going to pay? Because like having a job while trying to do that is going to be next to impossible. So I was like, hey, man, maybe go do one or two, save up some money, and then be able to complete my my licensure and all that stuff. But so who knows?
Yeah. Well, we got to talk about Cutthroat a little bit, though, in specific basis, because Cutthroat is one of those polarizing seasons. We had it's a little unorthodox from your typical usual seasons in a few different regards, but it's one of my favorites personally. We kind of had like a nice little mishmash of the cast, right? Like you had you had your few guys that are usually typically on every show, but we sprinkled in guys that are kind of like, yourself, who shows up like every once in a blue moon. Like we had your regulars and then your not so regulars. And that's why I think you had like kind of like that Band of Misfits type of vibe with the gray team, your kind of jock vibe of like all the guys that are always on these shows on the blue side. And then the red side was just like, we didn't really know what to make of them, I guess you could say. But
how they won, it still baffles me.
Made no sense.
In no point of the entire competition were they ever competition. Like, I hate to say it like that, but like, it was very gray versus blue. Like, we figured that's what it was coming down to. And even when we would compete in the challenges, red was always a non-factor. It was always it was blue, we gotta be blue
or gray. That was always winning. Yeah, and I wore gray just for this. Go figure.
Yeah, it was even me. Like, I was like, dude, there's no, like, we were like, whatever, man, red. And then somehow they wind up winning. And it's like, sometimes, listen, maybe that's the excitement of the game. But that one I still look. And listen, I love those guys. Like, but there was nothing. There was no strategy. They just accidentally won. That's literally what happened. And what happened is gray and blue were so focused on each other
They were just
that we
knocking
just
all their guys out. And then
Yeah.
the final was pretty much tailor-made for Red. It was a bunch of like heavy lifting and carrying stuff.
Yeah. And
So-
dude, and I'll say this, like, Tyler is a hoss. And like nobody gave that guy they gave what's his name, Ty, way too much. Like we knew from the beginning. I'll tell you right now, me and Luke could have told you that what happened to Ty was gonna happen. Because
what was the moment that gave it away for you then with
dude,
that?
we were doing that obstacle course thing where we were all running on the horse track and we all had to like get in
Was it
between.
with the tires?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So at one point, dude, I remember like the only reason Red won is because Blue and Gray went at each other right away, and Red just squeaked by while we were fighting each other, which was like our bad, right? So everyone on Gray paired up with somebody from Blue, and then that's how we fought through the whole thing, right? And so like I remember it was like Derek was a beast. Like I remember I grabbed Derek's leg when he was going under this like hay wheel, and I just yanked him and threw him back. So, and then like by the time I went underneath it, his ass was already underneath there with me. Like that's how quick Derek is. And we almost knocked over the thing, he almost collapsed and crushed us because we were just so into it. So it was like, I was like, okay, I don't ever remember Johnny on any of this. Like that's what's funny is like Johnny wins all these things, and I'm like, I don't ever remember any like thing where Johnny's good at this. It's like, but I remember Derek. I remember like, holy shit, Derek is one of those guys, man, where like he's so quick and he's so there's just this ball of power. So it's like, yeah, isn't this massive? But like, dude, he can put concentrated amounts of power in certain areas, and it makes it very difficult for you to defend against him or whatever. He's very. So we went to this part where we literally jumped up, and it was like we were gonna leapfrog each other. So like I jumped up, and I think Luke jumped up with me, and then Abram like leapfrogged us because he was like, "Are you guys here to like make sure our girls get through?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, we're here." So we're sitting up there, and I remember like Derek, he might have squeaked by it, but he was hard to hold back. I'll say everyone was hard to hold back, and then Ty comes up. And I'm sitting at the top of this thing, and like Ty jumps up, and like, dude, I just literally just push him back like that. Wow. And I'm like thinking, there's no way in hell that horse of a man, because how built in that he was. I was like, there's no way that's that easy. So like whatever, Luke comes and takes it. So I run forward. When it's all said and done, I go back to Luke and I'm like, listen, you were back there holding Ty down. I said, was it not incredibly easy? And he was like, yeah. I said, that is really weird. Like we were both like, that's really weird. And I remember going to Johnny and Derek, and I'm like, your guy Ty, you're defending him, and you shouldn't be. Like I was like, dude, the guy, because like I was like, easy. You need to keep easy. You need to keep, whoever. But like, I remember we were saying Ty is not what you think he is. And I don't know how to explain it. And like, none of them believed us. They were like, no, and they protected him. And then when they couldn't protect him, look what happened. And I've never had such an I told you so moment. I remember like, I was like, dude, we tried to tell you. And we shouldn't have. That was where I was stupid. They were my friends. Yeah. And I was like, listen. Your boy isn't what you think he is. And I think also it was like trying to defend other people that I thought should stay. Because I was like, there's people that you guys are getting rid of. Once again, I shouldn't have done it. But I was like, I think you guys are. And I think it was just like kind of like Johnny was like, nah. And I'm like, I wish you knew as much as you thought you knew, because that's going to blow up in your face.
Wasn't there like so many fights in that house too? I feel like that didn't even make air. Like a Ty, I think Vinny was always in a bunch of fights.
Ty picked. So this is what. Ty's going to pick at you. And this is the thing about Ty that I'll say is if you didn't respond, like I remember Ty one time threw a ball at me just out of nowhere, and and I just leaned over and the cameras are in front of me, and I said, and like in plain as day, like, I'm not the one to F with. Okay. Like I'm not here to make TV. And if you got a problem with me, then it's going to become a problem. Like this isn't like a fun, like, when I said that to Ty, very serious, I could see in Ty's face that like it wasn't, he didn't really he was more having fun, like entertaining, like pushing buttons, right? And I think when I leaned forward and I was just being very serious with him, like basically saying like, if you want shit to go down, it will go down with me, but it won't be for the cameras. It won't be an argument like we'll both go home. And I could see kind of when he looked at me like, this isn't worth it. You know what I mean? Like this,
Yeah.
it's not. I won't be able to have fun with him. This would turn serious real quick, and that's just not entertaining. You know, it's kind of the same thing with Johnny. Johnny likes to pick, but he doesn't want to like actually. He doesn't want to risk going home, or he doesn't want to risk like he just wants to have a little fun. And that's kind of Ty. And Ty was kind of going through his own thing, so he would like kind of knit at people until they snapped. And like with me, I'd already had enough experience with Kenny and Johnny on the island that I knew that that's what he was doing. So I just, I remember just looking at him in that room, and I think it was like the same night he got into it with
Brandon.
No, that was another night. Oh my God.
Katie, maybe. Oh, you
Katie.
think?
I think it might have been Katie. And he was looking for somebody to start with. And like, dude, to me, I always kind of stayed, but like right when he went through, I was like, oh no, I know what you're doing. And I'm just gonna nicely tell you, don't do it with me. Like I'm not in a place where I can do that right now. And honestly, to his like to compliment him, yeah, to his credit, he was just like, all right. You're like, I don't even think he found it. I wouldn't have been entertaining to him, So
yeah, he actually baited someone into hitting him on the following season, the first episode, and they got kicked off for hitting him. He didn't retaliate. Like that was like his thing.
Yeah, that's what he'll do. And if like he picks it. Here's the if he thought, and I guarantee you this, if he thought that person he baited was actually a threat, he wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. Like that says a lot about who he did it to, because he's like, I don't care about this dude. Like, like I'm not trying to say like I'm, whatever, but I think he definitely was like, okay, the risk and reward wouldn't pay off, regardless of if he thought he could totally kick my ass or not. I think he knew that at least it would be a much better fight than what he was going to get. Than what he was, willing to even put out. You know what I mean? I don't think he had that much investment in it. To where it's like when he messed with, other people, he got what he wanted. He got that like emotional, like, and that's what he wanted. He wanted like yelling back and forth to where like I was at a place where I couldn't do that. Like I had this really numb, and I think you could feel that. It was like either I was like this or I was like that. It was one or the other. I was very bipolar at that time. So I don't think he would have gotten the entertainment he wanted out of it. You know what I mean? So like with he and I, and it was only one time. It was only one little brief time. And I think it was early on, and he kind of was like, all right. And after that, honestly, he and I got along. Wow. Like he joked around, and like, I have no issues with Ty whatsoever. Yeah. But I did see where he would pick with other people, but also there's times where I'm like, why are you even feeding it? But there was also Emily. With Emily, him and Emily had a history. Yes. So I think there was definitely like he knew what buttons to push with her, and vice versa. So they both kind of like they have this weird love-hate thing. Yeah, that was. And so they would do it. And then Katie is a friggin' powder keg, dude. Like, if you're looking for a fight with Katie Doyle, you will get that fight with Katie Doyle. And I love her, dude. I love Katie. I will fight for Katie Doyle. If Katie Doyle called me out of nowhere and said, dude, I need you, I'm going to get into like a massive fist fight with a biker gang in Tennessee, I would be like, Katie, I will go die for you because I love you that much. You're friggin' hilarious. Like, she's so like, dude, and that's real. That is like, when I tell you, I'm like, there is no act with her. It's like, once you push, dude, like these eyes, you want to, and then she is just ready to go and fearless. And I like, God, she's one of those that you're happy when she's on your side. Definitely you don't want to be against her. So
you got to tell the Free Willy story now.
Oh, did you have Brad on?
Yeah, I had him on last week, a week and a half ago.
Did you ask Brad about this?
I didn't.
Why? He's the mastermind. Brad's the mastermind behind the whole thing. He was the one that
spearheaded that operation?
He masterminded the whole thing. Brad is actually hilarious, dude.
Oh, I know.
He's so hilarious. And like I didn't know how things were going to be with he and I, because like me and Tori had a past and he had just married her. And like, so I thought things were going to be really awkward with he and I. But like, honestly, dude, we got in there and met, and like, at least on my side, I thought me and Brad got along really well. And like, he made me laugh so many times, dude, because he just has that like dry sense of humor. And it's so. Here's the story. All right. So Tori had her skill for her pageants was playing the piano. So she could play the Free Willy song, the Michael Jackson song. And Cutthroat had a piano in it, in the house, which much to like, dude, yeah. So, and what was funny is she taught Abram how to play it. So Abram practiced it over and over again to the torture of everyone in the house. Like at one point, everyone's like, dude, I'm going to set that piano on fire. I can't take it anymore. Because it was always the same, like, dun, 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 real slow, like a kid was playing it over and over. It's like, dude, some like literally POW torture technique, like Guantanamo Bay. Like, so that's that's going on. And we're all just like getting really mad about it. And just Brad being Brad has to make it hilarious. So like one day he comes over to me and he goes, Dan, you're a comedian. I need your advice. And he's like, I'm writing a song based off of the Free Willy song. But I realized that as I've been listening to that song for days now, that the song itself is not about Willie at all. It's not about Free Willy. He's just, Michael Jackson is singing about a relationship with someone else. And I think that's kind of messed up. And I think we should rewrite the song to be only about Willie in the movie Free Willy. And I said, okay. And he goes, so this is my opening lyrics. He's like, Willie, where are you going? Why are you leaving? I thought we were friends. And so automatically, dude, I'm just like, he's got my attention because this is like totally right up my wheel. Like I have such a stupid sense of humor. And I'm like, okay, so we're working on like writing the whole song. So by the end of it, Brad's idea has just expanded. He's like, no, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to get Dunbar to dress up in all black Under Armour, right? And we're going to see if we can get a contraption from production where we can just float him over Derek. And Derek's going to be standing in the hot tub reaching up like the kid is in Free Willy, and he's just touching Dunbar's stomach. And he's going to be like, yeah! And then... So by the end of it, he has rethought a video. And he has we rewrote the lyrics to the Free Willy song. All of this branched off of people going nuts off of hearing it, but Brad somehow taking it going, you know what? This song isn't about the movie. Let's make it about the movie. Like, that's where his brain went, man. Oh, God, he was...
I feel like you couldn't have picked a better person for a prop than Dunbar.
Because Dunbar takes himself so serious that, like... And that's what Brad was saying. And like Brad and Dunbar are homies, dude. And he's like, dude, yeah. And just Brad has that like, you know, Dunbar's always so like, cool. You know, he's like so, you know, takes himself so serious. He's like,
he seemed like a tough guy around the edges, like a tough guy to really get to know. Like, did you get to understand Dunbar?
Yeah, like Dunbar. You gotta understand, Dunbar very early on had to look out for himself. And when people live in a life like that, you develop a certain kind of like, I hate to say narcissism, but you do because you have to believe in yourself. Maybe you're your only hope, you know? And so, I mean, he shared with the show, like early on, his grandfather, like had attempted to, you know, molest him, and he found out a lot of stuff about it. So he emancipated himself at like 14 or 15 years old.
Wow.
So he had gone to Ole Miss or whatever. I think he got himself into school on his own. Like he really had to do his own thing. And that forges, you know what I mean? Like you develop a certain kind of personality. And it's a personality of like, dude, I got to fend for myself. I got to do it for myself. So, yeah, he takes himself a little serious. And I like Dunbar. I think he and I have had some really good conversations. We've had some really funny conversations. Like, I thoroughly enjoy him. Like, I do. And
I loved him as a cast member. I think, like, there's certain guys that, like, it's almost an underrated element to reality TV when you have someone that's kind of just reading the room as opposed to somebody that's trying to be the center of the room. And I think Dunbar falls under that category very well as somebody that's just, you know, reading the room as opposed to kind of trying to get the room's attention.
And here's the thing that I think I kind of bonded with Dunbar on this. It's like, you know, you think you can figure someone out, right? So Dunbar, because he has had to fend for himself, takes himself serious and holds himself to like this certain standard all the time, right? Here's the deal, dude. When people have seen or gone through some really important stuff, sometimes it's hard for them to prioritize being competitive in certain scenarios, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so there's literally times he just wasn't into competing, right? And maybe that's why his performance wasn't great. Okay. I'm the same way. but to where I can own it and be like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry. I'm jacked up in the head, man. I just didn't give a shit. And that's why I was bad.
He kind of had more excuses.
Yeah. He'll sit there and be like, no, it's because he has so much. And I'm sure that what he knows his potential. And he knows that at that time, he's not fulfilling it. But
I mean, he's one of the bigger guys on the show.
Yeah. And so without him going like, all right, man, maybe, I don't know, because it isn't, sometimes you just can't explain why. Like, I don't know, I kind of just like, I embrace my dysfunction. You know, it's like, yeah, I don't know why, I just don't. I should care. I should care about all that money. I should, and I don't. I have no damn interest. It's not like I'm rich. I'm not rich. I could have used that money. To whereas Dunbar, like, he can't put his head around it. He's like, no, I should, even though I'm not, I should, and I can't. And he holds himself to such a high standard that, yeah, it'll get to a point where he's like, no, it's this, that. And I think that's like when you know him and you like him, and you know what I mean? Like, you love him for it.
Yeah.
That, like, when you watch that, you laugh. And I think that's how Brad is. Like, Brad knows that about Dunbar. It's like, yeah, Dunbar over here. Like, you know, it's like, he is. It's lovable, but he's like, he takes himself so damn serious. And it's like, bro, sometimes it's okay to just go, I didn't give a shit. Or I didn't care. Or I just didn't, you know, like, I just didn't. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't. I can't explain it to you. I don't know. But he won't do that. He has to have an explanation. He has to have, like, but that's also it's testament to him, because that's how he's had to live his life to be successful despite a lot of the stuff that was on him. You know what I mean? How Dunbar looks in the life that Dunbar led are not the same thing at all. And that's what I'm saying. Don't judge a book by your cover. When you look at Dunbar might seem like somebody who came from privilege, and very much not the fact. So I think he combats that too. I think he knows what he looks like and what he's been through. And I think he understands that there's automatically assumptions, and I think he has issues with that. Rightfully so. And I think also he has issues sometimes with maybe not meeting his own potential, because he's had to set that bar so high for him to be successful. So I think so to me, all of his, like, I would say, like, his downfalls or whatever someone might call it is actually something to me that makes him more endearing. Like, it makes, you know what I mean? So that's why I like Dunbar a lot. That's why I like Brad. That's why I mean, honestly, man, there's very few people that I dislike, because I think, like, once you learn their story, it makes a lot of sense of how they are. And you're like, well, it's not, I mean, they're not evil. They just, we're all products of our environment, or we're all products of what's happened to us. And that's, you just kind of gotta, I don't know, man. I think definitely when you're as big of a screw up as I was, like, you need to embrace people's stuff, you know, quicker, or else you're a moron. It's like, I'm asking you to forgive me and understand me, but, like, I can't do it for other people. Like, that's pretty stupid. But yeah, guys, everything that they do is explainable, and it may come from darker places than what you think. And maybe they don't want to share it, and that's completely up to them to do that. But yeah, a lot of times if you see someone on those shows or in those scenarios where you're like, I don't understand why they're out, like, there's probably a good reason. There's a very, very good reason.
It's always a rhyme and a reason.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, oh shit, like that's more. There's a lot of that. There was a lot of that on, like, especially in Cutthroat. Like, when I got there and I was very open about, like, just like my substance abuse issues and trying to, like, stay sober and everything. A lot of people came over to me that would share their experiences, and a lot more of those guys were dealing with addictions that people don't even know about, that they didn't want to talk about, like serious ones that they were trying to keep it, and they didn't want others to know, so they kept it quiet. So I always say that, man, there's even, like, what you do know, there's more to it. And so, like, if there's somebody that you're like, okay, what is like, why is this person being this way? There's probably a very good reason. Very, very good reason. Be understanding. I don't know any of the new people. They might just all be assholes. I can't talk for them. But the older crew, I'd say the older crew, definitely, everyone I bumped into there was more of a reason for why they were, and it was like, oh man. So
yeah. Well, I think that might be a good place to close it. I think we cracked out a lot of good points and a lot of good nuggets in this conversation. Dan, thank you for being so gracious with your time today. I had a great time catching up with you, and I'm so thankful for the stability in this one that we didn't have the first time. So.
Man, I'm sorry if I got to work on this. You ask questions and I go everywhere. I'm a storyteller, dude. So, like, you're like, hey, Dan, how did you get to the store today? I'd be like, so first off, let's start with what I think of stores. And then, and that's where I think that may be very annoying to some of your listeners. Guys, I apologize. I just,
it happens.
We're
going to be happy to see you. So,
yeah, they're probably like, that dude don't shut up. I think I know Dan's. Dan's addicted to talking now. He got rid of booze, and he doesn't shut up. That's his thing now. But yeah, if guys, if you want to listen to me and Abram chat it up about anything, Dan and Abram versus Life, it's on Spotify, and I have another one too called Irreverent and Irrelevant with a friend of mine, Matt Murphy from the wrestling business, and like that one is not constructive, guys. It's just two people being gross. Honestly, it's one of them is like me and Abram trying to be constructive and contribute to mankind, and then me and my buddy Matt are just literally being just joking and making very terrible discussion points just for the fact of burning off steam. So if you guys want to laugh, irreverent and irrelevant, if you want to actually listen to some insightful stuff, then listen to me and Abram on Dan and Abram versus Life. And I promise Abram talks too. So if you guys think that I ramble, you should hear that dude. We ramble together. We only have
unison.
We take 5 minutes worth of conversation and stretch it to 2 hours of just rambling. But if you want to learn about what it's like to be a new father, or schizophrenia, or alcohol abuse, or anything, God, our topics are ADD too. So yeah, listen to it. Feel free to reach out to us. We interact with the listeners. Sometimes it's just episodes on them sending us their story and questions, and we just do the whole thing on that. We give their names and everything. So if you guys feel like it, do it.
Yeah, I'll link that for you guys as well. I know Abram's been on the show as well, so anything I could do to help and support you guys from afar.
Do you want him back on the show? Do you want him back on to push on him?
Not necessarily.
Abram.
I haven't reached out or anything, so.
Abram, get back on the show and talk to Mike. Talk to Mike about everything. He's done 25,000 challenges. I'm sure you can think of some questions.
He was supposed to be doing the All-Star ones too. He got nicked up.
Do 3 of them. I'm supposed to do 3 of them.
Yeah, COVID, injury.
Yeah, I was there when he snapped his not there, but like we were doing the show at that time.
Yeah.
When he snapped his Achilles running on the beach. So yeah, he'll make it back eventually if he can stop hurting himself. He loves those things, man. He loves competing. That's just his thing. He's the opposite of me, dude. Like if you give him any reason to compete, he'll do it. He just loves it. So he'll be interesting. Yeah, he's one of the good ones. That's the one that people deserve. People need to see the CTs, the Abrams, the West, the Johnnies, those guys. Not me sitting there making Free Willy jokes with Brad the whole time and just being useless.
I wish they showed that, man. There was a shit they should have shown addition to Cutthroat, but there is a lot of stuff that still was not shown on that. So Cutthroat is like the season that keeps on giving, I feel like. But
they have, so there's like, what sucks is there's copyright issues. So sometimes when we were doing things, what we were doing, like I could almost tell you that like the Free Willy copyright and the Michael Jackson like copyright is why they couldn't show that, because it's all, you know what I mean? Like they'll get sued, and it's like they get mad at you for singing songs and stuff. That's why Johnny Bananas will sing Happy Birthday over and over again, because it's not copywritten and they can't tell him to stop. Little trivia for you guys. If you guys want to know, Johnny Bananas sings Happy Birthday to the point of everyone in production wanting to kill him. So, little tidbit for you. I don't know if you ever covered that, but that's a little DVD extra for you guys. Cool. He does that on purpose, just to piss them off into the microphones that they have on you until like they almost want to. That's funny. Have you ever had Johnny on the show?
I've not yet. I've had Wes on though.
How's Wes? Wes is a great guy. Wes pisses people off
very well.
But Wes let me stay in his home in Kansas City for without even really knowing me. So he's a great guy. I wish the best for him. Never did a show with him though. I know.
I've had Kenny and Wes actually both.
I have had the pleasure of being friends with people that hate each other. That's the funniest part. Like I'm friends with one person who hates the other one, and those I don't know why you. And it's like I don't know. I like them. So it's like I feel like I'm like in the middle of this big divide with the Challenge family. It's like usually two sides. Like if there's a feud, I'm probably friends with both of them. Equally, in my time, and I have to listen to how much they hate the other one and vice versa. Wes, not so much. I've heard a lot about like why different people hated Wes, but Wes to me never talked bad about anyone else and was really nice and hospitable to me. So he's a good dude. I'll drop that one too. If you guys hate Wes, he's not as bad as you think he is. He's not bad. So I want you to feel bad for hating him. Yeah, I'm Wes's advocate. He paid me to say that.
All right. Well, I had a great time chatting with you, as always, and thank you again for hopping on here. Can't wait to put it out.
My pleasure, Mike. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
See ya.